Hello there, and welcome to the tour of the Probationer class light flat top lifter, the 9th vehicle in my Wimpomania line of vehicles. My name is Wimpoman, and I am the chief designer, chief builder, chief architect, and chief dumbass behind the, what am I going to say here? Behind the Probationer class project? Behind the Sterling Turret Transport Update project. As you can tell, this is an update to a vehicle, so I am going to roll the original vehicle segment title. That thing there that just came up and then went. Unfortunately, I'm only going to be able to tell you about the original vehicle. I can't show you anything because the original vehicle was never built in Empyrion. It was built in StarMade. It's another one of the Wimpomania line that has its origins in StarMade, which, if you don't know, is another space buildy game that is more like Minecraft than this is. So, the story is, I built a big ship called the Sterling class, and it was named after David Stirling, the founder of the British SAS. And I did that because I was, as some of you might know, in the Tutu SAS UK gaming clan. We played some first-person shooters and stuff. So I named that ship after him. Now, it wasn't technically a Wimpomania line vehicle, the Sterling class I'm talking about now, because the Wimpomania line didn't actually exist at that point. And it was as I was thinking about what I would be saying in this segment that I realised that the original of this was technically the very first of the Wimpomania line of ships. It was the one that actually all the rest took as its template. I thought it was originally the starter class, but technically it wasn't. So, it wasn't a Wimpomania line ship, the Sterling class. It was related. It had a similar nacelle because they're very generic and basic. I mean, they're supposed to be, by the way. The nacelles are supposed to be quite generic. But the cockpit was different and some things. Anyway, the way that turrets worked in that game, and I'm going to try and get some stuff out to use to demonstrate. Actually, I've changed my mind. I'm not going to bother. So, the way you had turrets in StarMade, in case you don't know, you would put a docking block onto one ship that you want something else to dock to. And you would do that if you wanted to carry around other ships as well, obviously. In fact, there was no real difference between a ship and a turret. So you would put a little docking block there. Now there was so it allowed you to carry around something that was 5 blocks by 5 blocks by 5 blocks in size. And in case you care, like Minecraft, the block size in that was 1 meter cubed. So twice the size of Empyrion here with the small grid. So you could expand that by attaching other blocks to the docking block. So you would then build separately what you wanted the turret to be with weapons, and I'm pretty sure it was the core block would then dock to the docking block. The core block of the turret would dock to the docking block on the main ship. And then you would put an AI block on the turret and then set the AI to turret. So it then wouldn't try and undock and fly around. Of course, you wouldn't put any thrusters on it, so it couldn't, even if it tried. But it would still detach if you didn't change it. So this Sterling class had 3 big turrets on it around the cockpit, 1 underneath and 2 on the side. Oh, and in fact, the next ship I'm going to build is going to be an Empyrion version of that Sterling class. It's going to be called the Innovator class in this game. And I'm going to have the big inner classes pods on it in the same places that the turrets were. The turrets, I had made 2 types, and there was 3 of each. So I did a weapons one that had you know, laser guns in it, and therefore there were 3 weapon turrets. And I also did a mining laser version. It was the same turret, it's just instead of the laser blocks, it was a mining beam block. And I couldn't carry them all around at the same time. So I then built a turret carrier, which looked like this, including the legs, for carrying around the other 3 turrets on it. So the idea was that when, you know, the weapon turrets were on the Sterling class, the turret carrier would carry the mining beam turrets, and then when you wanted to go mining, you'd swap them around. Of course, it didn't turn out to work very well, because it, much like in this actually, in order to operate a mining beam, I don't remember the AI block that you could put on turrets actually mining for you. I think you had to take control of the turret. So there were 3 of us playing, but we weren't always necessarily together. And of course, if you had this carrying the 3 turrets, or, you know, the original version of this carrying the turrets, you would need to have one in one ship that was designed for 3 people, one in this ship, and the other problem as well is, in order to dock the turrets to this ship, you would need the same docking block on top, and because I mean, unless you turn the AI off, the turrets on top of this would still work like turrets. So we ended up with this flying around. It was always usually me flying it. I mean, it was only once or twice. We didn't play StarMade for long, but so anyway, there you go. That's that's the story, and why it didn't really work, because we ended up with this just being like a bit of a weapons platform, and always having the mining beams on the Sterling class. So there you go. Righto then, that's the end of the first segment of the video, done and dusted sort of. I apologise again for not having anything to show you, but of course I have no videos or screenshots of it, but you have to trust that it does look like this. Oh! There we go, there it is. So depending on when you're watching this tour, this here is the freshman class transporter. Now I will be getting round to updating this, and so this is going to be one of the segment ships that's going to be a CV, and as I'm sure you can tell, this is just the SV version of that. But the new freshman class transporter, I don't know if you can see there, that might give you a better idea. So the freshman class is a 3-segment ship, whereas the new one that I'm going to update will actually be 4 segments, but it looks a bit like that. Segment, of course, being this section of the ship that's a bit wider. I obviously am referring to parts of the video as segments too, so that might be a little bit confusing, but there we go. Okay, so that was part of it as well. So this I originally built. It is currently hidden, as you can see. It was built before the game was released, before 1.0. This one was, the freshman. So I will be getting around to updating that too. And then there'll be an SV and a CV version of the same sort of ship. I mean, it will be slightly different, but you know. Right, so there we go. That'll be the end of that segment. The next segment then is going to be her role and task equipment. So her role as a flat top lifter is to carry around HVs, although obviously it can carry smaller SVs as well. And the equipment it uses to facilitate that task is obviously its thrusters, so I've given it enough lift thrusters to lift its own weight twice-ish, give or take a few hundred kilograms, blah blah blah. And, of course, the big pad on the top is what it uses to carry them around with, which I sort of have divided up into 3 segments, as you can see, three individual pads. So you can either have 3 small HVs, or 2 medium ones, or 1 big one, whatever. There we go, that'll be the end of that segment as well. So the next segment is going to be her propulsion, handling, and lift capacity. Right then, starting with her forward thrust, she has 8 large tier 1 thrusters, 4 in each nacelle. And then she has 4 medium tier 1 thrusters in each nacelle, making 8 of each in total, obviously. For braking and reverse, she has 12 medium tier 1 thrusters, 6 in each nacelle. Laterally, she has 12 medium tier 1 thrusters. As you can see, there are 6 there. Then there's 1 at the, what would you call it? The knee of each leg? Yeah, maybe the knee joint. And then 4 at the bow at the front here as well. So for descent thrust, she has 12 again, medium tier 1s. As you can see, there's 2 at the front there. Then there's 1 in each leg. And then 3 in the top of each nacelle as well. And then for lift, as we can see, we have some on by default, which is an indication that it also has a max lift function. So on by default is 10 large tier 1 thrusters, 3 in each nacelle, there and there, obviously. And then the other 4 are in the legs. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we also have 10 medium tier 1 thrusters. So we have 2 at the front there, and again on the other side. That's 4 so far. And then we have, sort of hidden, 1 more in each leg. So 1 there and 1 there. So they technically point into these thrusters, which means you can't use this ship if you have thrusters cause block damage on. Hopefully I've remembered to put that in the description. And of course there's another pair at the front as well on these little arm things. And then that brings us on to the max lift. So as you can probably guess, there are 6 large tier 1 thrusters set to max lift. 3 there and 3 there. And then 2 medium tier 1s at the bow. There and there. Those who know will know. I mean, I have gotten much better at finding missing textures before I do my tours. It's been a while. I'll have to fix that in a minute. Grrr. Okay. Right. So, it's mobility then. With max lift off, starting with its maneuverability, will accelerate forwards at 42 meters per second squared. It'll do reverse, lateral and descent at 24 meters per second squared. Obviously same number of the same type of thrusters in all of those directions. And then finally lift is 53 meters per second squared. And with max lift off, that will allow this ship to operate in up to 5.4 G. That's, of course, dry weight. Agility. So, yaw, 23 degrees per second. Pitch, 24. Roll is 60. Now we'll turn max lift on. So, the lift has gone up to 77. Which means in 4G it can lift 164.1 tons. And the vehicle itself weighs 83.9, so give or take it'll lift another 80 tons. Agility with that on, so the pitch goes up from 24 to 29 and the roll from 60 to 69. The best number of rolls to have. Okay, so to save a bit of time, stop the video getting too much longer, I'm not going to bother doing a test fly. So that'll be the end of that segment. The next segment is going to be her power, fuel and air. As usual with my tours, I'm going to tell you about this stuff now, then show you where it is later on. So she has 6 large power generators, 20 large fuel tanks, a pentaxid tank, 12 O2 tanks, 8 air vents, 2 O2 stations, and the interior is fully compartmentalized. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 compartments. In case you care: cockpit, foyer, lock, habitation, bathroom, engineering room, engine room, even. Well, close enough. Okay, that'll be the end of that segment, nice and quick. So the next segment is going to be her weapons, defences and construction. So this should be a fairly quick segment as well. Weapons: she has 4 Gatling turrets and nothing else. The 4 Gatlings are set to what I consider to be my general purpose configuration. So they will target ground troops and predators, and also the weaponry of small grids. Defences: she doesn't have a shield. She does have a small amount of armour, but it is just either steel or carbon composite, and then only in strategic locations. So for example, there's a bit of steel lagshot armour here protecting the core. There's also a little bit that's carbon composite protecting the warp drive. But then, in order to get to the warp drive, things also need to shoot through this carbon composite. I'm pretty sure that here that I'm in now is also steel, and of course all the thrusters and steel and stuff that's in the nacelles. But that's about it. So construction: here we have the unpainted version that I started to do a little while ago, so you can see how it's made. I'm sure you can guess, but the black stuff with that texture is the hardened steel. Of course, it has my patented structural frame running through the ship. Then, of course, we have the medium grey, which is the steel. And as you can tell, the flat top bed is... pad is completely steel. And basically everything in between the structural frame is 2. And then this almost white stuff with the hexagon pattern on it is the carbon composite. There isn't much, but there is some, and it's usually where it doesn't matter. So like there, for example. Oh, and the bulkheads and all the RP stuff in here is, of course, carbon composite. I always forget to mention the windows in my ships. Oh, well, mostly forget. So this is the normal windows, the Windows S. It's not hardened or armoured or whatever they call it. Let's give you a look underneath, actually. So mostly steel, apart from the structural frame. There we go. I think we've had a good enough look at what it's made of. Oh, one thing I should point out is that you may have noticed there's a white water. This is a water tank on the side that this one doesn't have, because I decided the water tank should go on it as I was already painting, so it was too late to do that. So maybe not, but I'm lazy. Yeah. Okay, there we go. That's the end of that segment. So the next segment is going to be resource gathering, production and storage. So resource gathering: she has none. Production: she comes with a single constructor. In fact, you can just see it through the window there. And then storage. So she has 2 250 SU ammo containers. They're not big. It's just each one is just a controller and an extension. But then you've only got 4 Gatling turrets to feed, so that's all you really need, I think. She does have 2 4,000 SU cargo containers in the engine room. Again, I'll show you where all this is later on. The water tank on the side here is actually a cargo container. It's 2,250 SU. There's also 2 1,500 SU cargo containers in the cockpit. Then there's a single 375 SU cargo container even underneath the constructor in there. Then we have a total of 23 cargo boxes of various sizes, 2 armour lockers and 4 mini fridges. Right, that's the end of that segment. So the next segment is going to be her interior layout and any remaining devices. So, remaining devices on the outside before we go in. Of course, I almost always forget about the landing gear, but she has landing gear, so she can land. I mean, you would sort of expect it with an SV. In fact, even most of my CVs will. You might know that the Commando class can't of mine, but there we go. Headlights. So she has 5. We have 1 that points diagonally down, 2 that points forwards, and then 1 on each side that points diagonally sideways, respectively. That moves us on to the flight regulation lighting, which of course my ship comes fully compliant with, starting with its orientation lights. So we have, to begin with, the formation lights, which are made up by these orientation... sorry, that put me off, and I'm going to turn that off so it doesn't get on my nerves. So these are illuminated orientation panels. There we go. They help you fly in formation with other craft, especially in low visibility conditions. Of course, like the nav lights, we have red on the port side, green on the starboard, and white on the stern. Unlike the nav lights, we also have yellow on the ventral section. Then there's the nav lights, and I will turn these on later on when we get to the signals, but we have again red on the port, white on the stern, and green on the starboard. Then we come to its anti-collision lights. There are 2 flavours. We have anti-collision beacons that come on when you use the main propulsion switch. So they are red on top that flash and yellow on the bottom that flash. So the yellow ones on the bottom are painted yellow because in present day NASA's spacecraft have yellow nav lights on the bottom. And I figured in the 350 years between now and when the game is set, give or take, that the yellow ventral nav lights will have changed into more anti-collision beacons, but they remained yellow is the idea. So they also remain painted yellow like a nav light. See, the red nav lights are painted red, etc. Then, of course, we have the flight strobes, which are also anti-collision. So those are the bright white flashing lights you see on the wingtips of planes. And on my on this ship, there's one there, one there. So basically, wherever there's a nav light, there's also a flight strobe. And those are to help any other craft spot you at long distances. Of course, doesn't quite translate well into game, but never mind. It makes it more realistic having them. Then we have the running lights that you can see coming on and off slowly. So they let any observer know that the ship is powered. Oh, I forgot to mention that the anti-collision beacons let any observer know that the thrusters are on and therefore it can move at any moment, is the idea of those. Detector. So the detector is there. As you can tell, there's a slight bit of asymmetry on this ship with that water tank over there, not here, and the detector there where there is actually a window on the other side. Right, let's move in because I want to show you that it has 2 wireless connectors. One in the ceiling of the cockpit, and then one right at the stern. We saw it earlier. It's just behind the core, which of course is there. Gravity generators. It has 2 medium gravity generators, one there and one here in the roof, just under the flat top pad. There is also an extra small in the cockpit, just between the seats. Well, I'm sure you can guess why, but the gravity the gravity field generated by this one came to just about here, So it meant if you walked into this sort of area, you would begin to float. So, yeah, never mind. Right, let's now take a proper walk around. I do want to point out that I've added this step since I took the screenshots. I didn't think it was important enough of a change to then warrant taking new screenshots. But the problem was that as you got to the top of the ramp was right under the door, and even though that door is actually on the inside block there, as proven by the fact that the force fields are actually out here, you couldn't get in through the door. I'm not entirely sure why, but it happened. So I added that lip. So, ramp, door, light, 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 and light is all controlled by that motion sensor up there. The other side is a mirror image. Yeah, let's turn off my light, my headlight. So now we can walk in. If you've seen the beginner class or the beginner class, I'm not going to bother explaining the difference between those two. If you know, you know. But you will recognise this foyer lock as the same one as those, with exception to what's in the ceiling. Oh, I should say, since I have looked at the core in the back, the reason it's right here at the back, because this isn't a combat ship, I thought it would be best to put it somewhere where if it does get destroyed, you lose as less of the rest of the ship as possible. Rather than trying to put it somewhere in the middle so that it can't be targeted quite as quickly, is the idea of that. It can be targeted fairly quickly, especially if you're running away, but I think it's the price you pay for a non-combat ship in order to not lose as much of it as you might otherwise. Let's move into the cockpit first and then we'll go backwards. In the cockpit, get through the door please. We have the two 1500 KSU, no, 1500 SU no K cargo boxes there and there. Then we have some small cargo boxes there and there. Those are containers, not boxes. Then we have the two little ammo containers, 250 each, as I said. This is a two-person craft, so you get the pilot seat and a passenger seat. Of course, we have lots of LCD working here. This is a comms panel with a keyboard for the passenger to operate, as it were, while the pilot is piloting. Let's move backwards. Lights in here are on that motion sensor. If you want lights left on when you get into the seat, you flick that switch. Now it only leaves on that one and that one. It turns that one off so that you don't get a glare in front of you looking out of the window. It also turns this one up here, or it doesn't turn that one on, I should say. But then it's so far back I didn't feel it necessary. I didn't actually point out the stuff in here, but I'm sure you can see. Yeah. Okay, so moving into the habitation area, we get a nice sofa thing to sit on while you change your armor and clothes and stuff, and we have boxes and lockers and things for tools and stuff. Here's the constructor with the 375 cargo container that it is connected to, with 3 small boxes above as well. We have a pretend eating place with 4 mini fridges. Then we get to where you sleep. So 2 bunks in this one, and you might recognise again from the beginner and beginner, this is actually the same habitation bit module. I mean, it's not a module on this ship, but you would imagine that they would take the same module, the ship manufacturer. Why am I saying they? Me, I'm the ship manufacturer. I have taken the same module like a real manufacturer would and just built the ship around it, as it were. Except obviously made those 2 seats. And this is now 2 bunks instead of 1, but you can see the similarities. It's got the same bathroom other than a window. Oh, and actually I ducked through that door because on the beginner and the beginner, those windows are in the floor here, which annoyingly means you have to duck to get through the door. But on this one, I moved the floor windows, and now you don't. Duh. But yeah, the difference with this, and the beginner and the beginner is that little window there. There are 2 window blocks, and they are polarized, both of them, so that it's harder to see in from the outside, in case you're worried about pretend make-believe privacy. We have a pretend make-believe that isn't showing up correctly. There we go. So a pretend make-believe shower with a pretend make-believe head and basin. The light switch in here is there. This door, by the way, is manual. What the fuck? It's bloody doors. It's one of the problems with this game is that we are 3 blocks tall, and so are the doors. But as you can see, there's a bit of the door that comes down into the 3rd block, and it's quite hard to get through them. I don't know why they do it, but there you go. Then we move into the engine room. Oh, I haven't been pointing out the automatic doors. See, these say manual when you point at them, but actually that one is automatic, that motion sensor there. This one is automatic on that motion sensor there. That one is manual. This one is automatic on that motion sensor there. Engine room then, and as you can see, we have some upgrade slots for tier 4 CPU extenders there, and a shield generator there. Obviously I will cover that a bit more when I get to the upgrading bit. Then we have a comms panel in case one crew member is back here and another one is in the cockpit and you need to talk to each other, is the idea. Of course it's just fluff. Then we have the fuel tanks. They are so half of them are there. There was 20, so there's 10 on this side, some there, and then some behind them. And obviously the other side is a matching mirror image. Here is the 2 4000 SU containers. Oh, that's right. So this that I was in earlier, that I said was steel until I changed it for a container extensions. There we go. Then we have, obviously, the warp drive is there with some small boxes around it. Behind these blue shutters is the generators. Now, you can only access one of them manually, but the other ones are behind them. I don't think there's anything else actually to show you. I'm pretty sure that's everything. Oh, the lights in here, I'm sure you guessed, are on a motion sensor, that one there. I'm sure you guessed that the lights in here are on that one there. Yeah, I think that's everything I need to show you. Good. So that's the end of that segment. The next segment is going to be its shortcuts and signals. Starting with the device groups column, we have the main propulsion at the top. As I showed you earlier, that turns on what I referred to as the default thrusters. Then we of course have max lift that turns on the additional lift thrusters. As I said earlier, the main propulsion also turns on the anti-collision beacons. As I said earlier, they are yellow on the bottom, and they are red on the top, there, and there, and there. Okay. Next two down are blank. In case you're wondering why there are blank ones in between, it's because I normally keep these in the same order regardless of which ship. So normally there would be drills or something here. Actually, it depends on how the weapons work. You may have noticed, if you have seen the beginner and beginner, that weapons and shields is actually over here, and then gatlings is over here. But it only has gatlings, so I've left that over there, the weapons and shields. Right, so the next one down is artificial gravity. Of course, turns on and off the artificial gravity generators. They come turned off. You would obviously, if you want gravity in space, you would turn them on. So, next one down, production, turns on and off the single constructor. Then we have air vents. I'm going to cover this in case this is the first tour of mine you have seen, but I'm going to do it quickly, as quickly as I can, in case you have seen me say it before. If we have a look at power lift and turn oxygen off, it doesn't change because although it no longer blows air into the ship, the ventilator blocks themselves are still on, so I've given you a switch to turn them off so you can save some power if you're in a breathable atmosphere. There we go. Right then. Oh, I always forget. I have been doing relatively well. Please don't auto-group because the custom groups I have set up here do... No, the device group signals shortcuts do rely on my custom groups. There we go. That was the correct way around. Moving on to the signals, power save. Turning on power save will turn off all of the motion sensors and levers. It'll turn off both Wi-Fis. It'll turn off all of these LCDs, as you can see here. And I didn't cover the name displays and registries on the outside, did I? I might as well do that now since it is roughly relevant. So you can put your ship name there, and obviously here, so you can name your ship Twinkle-Bell if you like, and on the back there. It is always relatively evident where the projector is for these. It's always close by, as I'm sure you can probably guess. In case you're wondering, ISSV stands for Intrasolar System Vehicle. That means it's a vehicle that can go internally to a star system. Oh, so it should be an intra-star system vehicle. There we go. That's what I meant to say. Shh. Right then we have registries. We have the main registry on the nacelle, top and bottom. Again, the projector is relatively obvious. So this is the 9th vehicle of Wimpomania. And you would put the number here of which yours is. If you actually care about such things, you would look on the workshop at how many have been subscribed to and then add 1, and that should be yours. The reason you add 1 is because mine, I'm not subscribed to the workshop and mine would be number 1, is the idea. Alright, so that was the main registry, and then we have 2 that shows the full registry and the class. In case you care, Wimper Manufacturing, Transport Lifter Flat Top. So this is a flat top, this is specifically a flat top variant of a lifter. A lifter is a type of transport craft, you see? Okay. Blank, next signal down. Then, as I said earlier, weapons and shields. Of course, it has no shields, so at the moment all it does is turn on the Gatling turrets. Next ones down are nav lights and flight strobes. I have turned them on so you can see them. Flashy, flashy with the flight strobes, and the red, and the white, and the green of the port, stern, and starboard nav lights. Oh, aye, the lights on the flat top, by the way, are also on motion sensors. That one there, and that one there, and that one there, and that one there. Headlight switch. So, I've been remembering to explain this now. So if you're in the cockpit seat, you can turn the headlights on and off with the keyboard shortcut. For me, it's L for Lima, and I'm pretty sure that's the default. But in case you get out of the ship and realise you've left them on, I wanted to give you a way to turn them off without having to go back into the pilot seat. Ta-da. Hang on. I'm pretty sure I have tried this, but I do want to make sure. So just then I turn them on with the L key. So you have to double click it, whatever. So that's fine, I think. And then we have vehicle ramps. So vehicle ramps at the front and the back to help you get up on top to carry around your vehicles. There we go. Right, that'll be the end of that segment. So the next segment is going to be her CPU and upgrading. Now, of course, some of this I already covered in the interior layout bit, but in case you're skipping around in the video, I'm going to cover it again anyway. So the ship's core is in the stern, and again I put it there so that if you do lose the core, I want you to lose as little of the rest of the ship as possible. CPU, she comes in at just under 35,000 of the 40,000 you are allowed with tier 3. The CPU extenders are in the engine room at the back, behind that orange door. One's there and one's there, which also brings me on to upgrading, because we have tier 4 CPU extender slots. As the sign says, you rip up the red blocks and the tier 3 extenders, and you replace them all with tier 4s. That then gives you enough CPU to put in a shield generator there. Again, rip up the red blocks and the screen. Now, the 6 large generators are enough to power everything, I'm pretty sure. One other thing I would say is that I've kept all of the thrusters as tier 1s, not just so that you can upgrade them. It's so that you can upgrade them if you want to, but I don't want you to. I don't want to force tier 2s on you if you don't need them. Especially considering, like I said earlier, this will operate in 4G, carrying it's basically its own weight almost anyway. But upgrading at least the lift thrusters will give you extra carrying capacity, but you certainly would have the CPU to do it. In fact, I would say you have the CPU to do it even without upgrading to tier 4, actually. I don't know what it would come to, but it's surprising how little difference the thrusters actually are in CPU cost. See, a tier 1 medium to a tier 2 medium is not even 50 CPU points for each of those. So yeah, you probably could get away with it. And then of course, as you can probably guess, it's got some cargo containers, but not a lot. So I mean, if you're not really worried about the RP value of all of this stuff in here, feel free to rip out the beds and the bathroom and fill this with a cargo container if you want to carry extra stuff. Well, 2 actually. You'd still want a gap in the middle probably to get into here. I think that's everything in that category. No, in that segment, yes. So the next and last segment is going to be any other info. Right then, so I keep meaning to talk about this, and I'm getting better now that I've got the other info segment. The damage texture that I put on the inside of all of the blocks, which, in case you are interested, it is that colour and that texture, because in my opinion, when you lose a block, that floating W is a bit weird, but never mind. In my opinion, what is revealed, the surfaces of the other blocks painted like this, looks like smouldering metal to me. And it certainly looks like damage more so than just that. That's just normal hull texturing to me, so it's almost like, is it meant to be like that? Which, in case you care, is why I do the damage texture. It adds a bit of realism, in my opinion. I'm going to talk now a little bit about how to deal with my blinkies if you don't like them. Nav lights and flight strobes are very easy, you just don't turn them on. Now I'm going to talk about these running lights that you can see going. So if you scroll to the bottom of the device groups, you will find the regulation lighting at the bottom, and you're looking for running lights. It's as simple as deactivating the block group, and now they won't ever come on again because there is nothing that will turn them on. And the anti-collision lights, so those are the red flashing ones on top and the yellow flashing ones on the bottom when you use the main propulsion switch. Of course, if you want to use the thruster switch here, on an SV of mine it's not so bad, because all that does is turn on all of the thrusters and leaves the flashy flashes off. Whereas on a HV, I mean, you wouldn't have the flashy flashes because it's a ground vehicle. But of course, this one, as far as I know, doesn't do RCSs and the hover engines, which would be on this one. So if you're okay with using this switch and it turns on all of the thrusters, max lift and the main propulsion, by all means do it. However, those anti-collision beacons, if you don't like them, if they're active, deactivate them. If they're not, then you don't need to. And you'll notice the shortcut here. Remove the shortcut. And now they won't come on again. Oh. So there you go. That's how you deal with my flashy flashes if you don't like them. And finally is the naming convention of the Wimpomania line of ships. So I consider myself to be a noob when it comes to building, so all of the Wimpomania line of vehicles are all named after words that mean someone who is new at something, or someone who is the first at something, or synonyms of those words. So actually it was the synonyms of people who are new at something that then led to the first at something, which is why you end up with things like Innovator and Pioneer, for example, and Pathfinder, but also therefore why you end up with things like Probationer and Initiate and things. So there we go, that explains that, and I think I've now covered everything that you need to know. Oh, one last thing to do, and actually it's not the colours, in case you're wondering. There is no choice of primary colour. There is a primary and its variant. You may even, in fact you can see it just down there. It's quite subtle, but I have used variants of the primary colour elsewhere on the build. So it's not that, in case you're wondering. It's to do this. Hang on, that's the unpainted one down here. I like to publish in the tour video if I can, because it sort of lets you feel like you're part of the process, or sort in. There we go. Right, so thank you very much for taking an interest in the Probationer class light flat top lifter. I hope you get some use out of it, and hopefully I will see you in another video for a different build. So thank you again, and goodbye.